The Beatles are overrated might be the most cliched take in the history of opinion.
Well, listen, I was the first one to say it, so everyone's following me, okay? So, I mean, same thing with Windhorst here, okay? I was the first one to say LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, they are together. Their off seasons are tied together. Then I heard Windhorst say it the other day. Amin sent it to me, and now I'm thinking about suing Windhorst because I own Windhorst, just so you know. Any conversations about LeBron, Kawhi, free agency, playing together next year, I own those conversations.
Windhorst, he was threatening to sue you by text yesterday for taking that Kawhi Leonard, LeBron story, whatever it was. Stugatz was threatening an in-house lawsuit.
I heard that he came up with the concept of having a show in a barbershop, too, and he's involved in those lawsuits as well.
Ooh, Windhorst, they don't have any time. What are you reporting exactly, though? Because Stugatz did say, as soon as all this started happening, hey, LeBron is going to get Kawhi.
I'm not bringing out a measuring stick on this one, but this has been something that's been talked about for weeks. Just because it got blasted out yesterday, I can't help it. But we've got two parallel universes happening in the NBA right now. We have the playoffs that are going on, and they're very important, and we're our daily focus. And then we have this coming off season where LeBron's going to be a free agent, and Paul George is going to be a free agent, and Kawhi Leonard may be on the market, and the Philadelphia 76ers have this beautiful, glowing trove of assets that they have, including the Lakers pick, which is the 10th pick, which everybody seems to forget that they have that. If it pops up into the top three, it may go to Boston, but probably not. And so not only are the Sixers a team that has a great-looking future, this summer they have salary cap space and trade assets and that lottery pick and their own first-round pick. They could make a trade offer for just about anybody in the league.
It's just the perfect way for him to age, Brian. To stay in the East, do it with the best young people, and see if you could go get Golden State in the finals that way.
I mean, I don't know how much you want to get into the nitty-gritty of this, but Kawhi Leonard, even though he's under contract for next year, if he'd like to be traded, he can control where he goes. Because with only 1 year on his contract, a team is not going to give up everything for him unless they know he wants to stay. So he could choose where he wants to go. There are also people who would argue that if the Sixers were able to put together a trade that could get Kawhi Leonard, that they wouldn't even want or need LeBron James. That having LeBron and Ben Simmons on the same team is a duplication, and that having Kawhi and Covington and those other guys potentially, and Embiid, of course, is the championship team that they want. But there's also the possibility that Kawhi won't want to go to Philly. That Kawhi will want to go someplace else. There's a possibility Kawhi could want to go to Miami. And that's really what the Heat need. The Heat are in a position where they're capped out and they don't really, they're out a couple of first-round picks. What the Heat need is what happened with last year with Chris Paul. That was Chris Paul going to the Clippers and saying, you're going to trade me to the Rockets or I'm going to walk away from you for nothing.
What did you say about Kawhi Leonard?
Say it again.
Coming to Miami?
One more time. Say it again.
What?
That somebody at some point is going to want to play for the Heat again, and that's really what the Heat have to hope for.
Yes, we'll take it. We'll take it. Somebody eventually is going to want to play for the Heat again.
Did you think that Dwayne Wade had a game left in him? I thought he had a moment left in him. I did not think he had a game left in him.
Yeah, I agree. I thought, the Heat play so many close games. I think 1 out of every 4 or so, like 1 out of every 3.8 of their games this year was determined by one possession. And so I was thinking, look, there's going to be a handful of close games in this series, and Dwayne is going to be there at the end of one of them. The guy made everything. He was at the top of his game last night. I don't know if he can do it again, but it was so fun to watch. It was so fun to see him staring over at Kevin Hart. I really thought that the Sixers had the momentum at the end of the game, and the Heat buckled down, and Dwayne made a couple of plays, and the dagger jumper to win it was a great moment. And he's gotten the Sixers twice now. He hit the game winner back in February. I mean, the Sixers only lost like 3 games in the last 8 weeks, and the Heat have beaten them I think 3 times in that span. I think 3 of their last 5 losses are to the Heat. So I always thought this was going to be an interesting series, and I know the Embiid factor weighs big out there. But Dwayne Wade, I had so much fun watching that game last night. It was really enjoyable.
Brian, I've heard a lot of people say that what LeBron is missing, what this Cavs team is missing, is a second guy who can get his own off the dribble. And so I wonder, armed with hindsight now, do you think the Cavs made a mistake allowing Dwayne Wade to go? He can't do that every night, but he can do it once in a while.
You know, it's one of those things. At the point when they made those decisions, the Cavs had decided that Dwayne wasn't going to play anymore. And you know, I'm one of these guys who laughs when people make sweeping announcements in an NBA season, because the NBA season is so long. Playoff series are so long. Playoff games last forever. So when anybody says something is in stone in the second quarter of a playoff game, I laugh, much less the whole season. So they had gotten to the point where they pretty much forced Dwayne into the decision, because Ty Lue had decided that Dwayne was becoming a bit of an issue in the locker room. Now, I wasn't in the locker room, so I can't tell you why. To me, I thought Isaiah Thomas was causing issues within the locker room, but there were people with the Cavs who told me that they thought Dwayne was a bigger issue than Isaiah Thomas, and if there had to be one of the two to go, that they would have wanted Dwayne to go. That stunned me. But I will say that from day one, Dwayne was not a great fit in Cleveland. I mean, LeBron said it the first week of training camp, that he had to petition harder than he ever thought to get Dwayne onto the team. So it may not have been a great fit, but I'll tell you, at the end of a tight game, you know, one of the things LeBron is looking around and seeing is he doesn't have a lot of experienced guys out there.
Brian, Hassan Whiteside's a $100 million player who's like a situational guy now. He's disappeared in the first two games of this series. What do you make of his future with the Heat?
Yeah, I don't know what his future in the league is, because if you watch the way the game is played, it doesn't, you know, bode well for him. You know, I mean, just to shift it elsewhere, for example, I was at the Portland-New Orleans game the other night. They have a really good center in Jusuf Nurkic. He's going to be a free agent. He's looking for one of those $100 million contracts himself. The Pelicans ran him off the court. They had to take him out of the game late in the game. He's really good. He's one of the best defenders at center in the league, according to the stats. Because the way the game is played right now, if you have real active players that spread the floor, it doesn't behoove your big man. You have to be a really athletic, nuanced, forward-looking player to survive in the center in this league, and that is not the way I would describe Hassan. His attitude challenged at times, and so it's a problem. And you know, I understood why the Heat gave him that contract a few years ago. If they didn't give it to him, I think the Dallas Mavericks were ready to. It wasn't like he wasn't valued at that money. But I question whether or not he's a great fit in the league going forward. And the reason that's a problem is if the Heat ever wanted to trade him over the next couple of years, I think they're going to have a very hard time doing that.
Pablo, can you think of another real-time evolution in basketball like that, where you go from 1 minute to the next, and the way that you were playing post-basketball, Hassan Whiteside, at any time in history, you get the 7-footer. You want the 7-footer, except for right now. When in real time does evolution like that ever happen in sports in a way that we can all see without checking ESPN, what used to be ESPN Classic?
It does feel like Hassan Whiteside, his skill set just isn't relevant anymore. It just doesn't feel that way. And one of the things that's happened is we are seeing human beings unlike those that we had ever imagined. And I don't think it's too much to say that. I don't think it's too much to point out that, man, I stood next to Joel Embiid once, and that dude has skills that make other giant dudes look incompetent. And so for Whiteside, if you can't figure that out, yeah, I don't know if there's a parallel. The game has done a thing where not only – it used to be that big was how you won basketball games. And then it was a thing where skill was how you won basketball games. And now you have to be big and skilled. And if you're not both, you're kind of irrelevant.
Well, because it's interesting, because Brian brought up Nurkic, and he's right. Nurkic is great, but Anthony Davis is better.
Well, but what do we do with this? So Stan Van Gundy goes to Detroit. He's like, I'll build around Drummond. And then it's like, never mind. Like, the whole thing collapses.
Wrong skill.
Yeah.
Wrong skill. Rebounding was not the skill that you wanted to optimize for.
But what, Brian, did you see that happen? Like, when did you notice that it was now everyone is taking the 2 steps to get behind the three-point line? It's not even to get to the rim anymore. It's how do I take my 2 steps or travel backward? Like James Harden, did you realize that was happening, that evolution right in front of your eyes? When did you realize it, Brian?
Well, let me give you just a real little nugget that explains it. In 2015, the Cleveland Cavaliers traded 2 first-round draft picks to get Timo Mozgov because they were so desperate to have a big man in the center.
Good metal band, Mozgov.
Watching this league for the last 2 decades, I see punch, counter punch. And I think there will be a team that figures out, you know what, we'll take advantage with the right big man to bring bigs back into the game. But I agree with Pablo that it's going to be a different style of big. And Hassan Whiteside, even though it sounds cliche, should probably spend this summer shooting three-pointers.